earlier with Carly Fiorina to discuss her new momentum and some of the issues she'll have to confront. Ms. Fiorina, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
You've noted that up till now, more than half of Republican voters didn't know who you were. That obviously changed with the debate. So I guess the question is, how pivotal a moment is this right now for your campaign?
Well, it's obviously a very important moment because now more people know who I am, and we know, based on what's happened before this debate, that as people come to know me and they understand who I am and what I've done, and most importantly what I will do, they tend to support me. And so the truth is we're going to stay out here working hard every single day so that people who maybe were introduced to me for the first time at that debate now get to know a little bit more about me. These are important decisions. These are issues, and I want the American people to know as much about me as possible, actually.
Well, of course, with greater attention does come greater scrutiny. Here's what you said about the political class in the debate.
If someone's been in a system their whole life, they don't know how broken the system is. A fish swims in water, it doesn't know it's water. It's not that politicians are bad people. It's that they've been in that system forever.
To make your point, you say, how long have we been talking about entitlement reform but doing nothing about it? But Ms. Fiorina, isn't that really less about being part of the system and more about the fact that there are really, sizable, real differences between Republicans and Democrats? How would you, as president, get those two sides, which both have their point of view, to compromise?
There are some real sizable differences, for sure. And the way, I believe, to bridge differences, the way to negotiate a good deal, and a lot of politics is negotiation. I've done a lot of negotiating in my life. You start out by stating very clearly what your principles are, what you must have, what your walkaway position is. There can't be any misunderstanding about that. It can't be everything, but it has to be some things. And then you enter into an open-minded spirit of collaboration about everything else and try to find common ground. That's how I would work with members of Congress. On the other hand, Chris, there are some issues about which there really is broad bipartisan agreement, and yet nothing gets done. How long have we been talking about broad bipartisan reform for tax reform? It doesn't happen. Everybody says they want to secure the border. It doesn't happen. Everybody says our VA is a scandal. Nothing changes. So there are a lot of things about which there is actually agreement, and nothing is happening.
I think it's fair to say your biggest moment of the debate was when you called for the defunding of Planned Parenthood. Here that is.
I dare Hillary, Barack Obama to watch these tapes. Watch a fully formed fetus on the table, its heart beating, its legs kicking, while someone says we have to keep it alive to harvest its brain. This is about the character of our nation. And if we will not stand up and force President Obama to veto this bill, shame on us.
First of all, do you acknowledge what every fact checker has found, that as horrific as that scene is, it was only described on the video by someone who claimed to have seen it? There is no actual footage of the incident that you just mentioned.
No, I don't accept that at all. I've seen the footage, and I find it amazing, actually, that all these supposed fact checkers in the mainstream media claim this doesn't exist. They're trying to attack the authenticity of the videotape. I haven't found a lot of people in the mainstream media who've ever watched these things. I mean, they will claim somebody watched it for them. I will continue to dare anyone who wants to continue to fund Planned Parenthood watch the videotapes. And anyone who wants to challenge me first is going to have to prove to me that they watched it.
You wanted to fund Planned Parenthood, so let's talk about what the organization actually does. 4.4 million health services involving sexual diseases and infections, 3.5 million services in family planning, 935,000 services in cancer screening and prevention, 1.1 million other women's health services, and yes, 327,000 abortions. Ms. Fiorina, I understand that you want to end all abortions, but you're also willing to cut off funding for all of those HIV tests and breast exams?
Well, of course not. All of those things are important. I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I've been engaged in programs that move aggressively into neighborhoods to make sure that all women are screened. Every single one of those women's health services that you just described are vital to be continued and actually vital to be expanded. Of course we should be funding those things. But I find it fascinating that Democrats will never support taxpayer funding, for example, for a women's health center right next door to a Planned Parenthood that would provide all those same services and also provide women an alternative to abortion. Of course, those other services must be available to any woman and every woman. But that's not what this argument is about. This argument is about whether or not we as a nation are going to stand by while taxpayer money is being used to fund this kind of butchery.
You brought up the question of taxpayer, and you say that we should defund Planned Parenthood as part of the budget battle, which we're going to get by the end of this month, even if that means that we end up with a government shutdown, regardless of who's responsible for that government shutdown. Carol Tobias, who is the president of National Right to Life, has just written a column in which he says that a shutdown would be a big mistake, that it's more important to elect a pro-life president. She writes, quote, "All of these goals are more easily and effectively achieved if the 71% of American voters opposed to a government shutdown aren't angry at the pro-life candidates running for president." Is she wrong when she says a shutdown would be a mistake?
Well, I disagree with her on this, and I'll tell you why. First, something very important has changed since the last government shutdown. What's changed is the Republican Party has historic majorities in the House, and we now control the majority in the Senate. A lot of people worked really hard out there in the nation to make that happen. I was one of them. And I think people worked hard because they expected a change based on that. And I do think that people want to know, what do we stand for? What does our party stand for? What do I stand for? And I will say, once again, President Obama can explain to the American people why it is so important to him to continue to fund this organization that no one denies is engaged in this kind of barbarity.
Ms.